Chapter 7, Day 15, Afternoon, Pray your gods, for you are going to need it. Very few shinobi were religious, for the simple reason that most religions have orders like don't kill, and for a shinobi that is impossibility. The kind of bad karma that killing some more is most of them avoid thinking about for the sake of their peace of mind. Nobody wants to think that they might be born a tapeworm in their next life. But again, Naruto was a special case. Due to his reputation as the damned demon fox, Naruto hadn't been welcome in the usual Buddhist or Shinto temples during his formative years. Little Naruto, being Naruto, hadn't let this deflate himself, but been driven to the more exotic faiths. "What are you doing?" Sai asked from Naruto-kun, who was on his knees in front of a black, oval-shaped stone. It was covered in flowers, so he had thought it was some kind of flower arranging tool, only wondering where Naruto-kun got those flowers. "I'm praying this will go well." "We are gonna need it," answered Naruto-kun sagely. An old shinobi who had originally come from a western land behind the sea and who hadn't much cared about Naruto's tenon had introduced him to a deva called Shiva, who was the creator, preserver, destroyer, revealer and concealer of all that is, so a pretty major god in Naruto's opinion. For Shiva he performed ablution, flower worship and food offerings in his small home altar. In the land of snow he had been introduced to Hashinao Uk Kamui, the Kamui of the hunt. She protected hunters and guided them to game. This very old goddess of the snow people's Ainu forefathers had seemed like a very nice deity to him, and since the ninja were kind of hunters he figured she would take care of him. The Ainu didn't believe in rebirth, so that took care of that problem. He was supposed to offer a portion of his cash to her, but since offering human body parts would have been really gross and kind of villainous, he had decided to give her part of his mission payments. And then there was ramen, but that was in a whole class of its own. "Why? What kind of troubles are you anticipating?" Sai asked, looking oddly at Naruto-kun. Might he have found out what Danzo-san was planning for him? Something always happens. Our first C rank was supposed to be guarding Tazunabaka from bandits, but we got Zabuza and Haku-kun, and then Sasuke-kun almost died. Then there was the Chunin exams and Orochimaru. And when we went to the land of snow to protect filmmakers, the lead actress was secretly a princess and we toppled a tyrannical regime. But I got a really cool goddess out of it. Naruto started affronted, but ended up babbling cheerfully. So much like Naruto, Sai thought. Some people returned from mission with the Hittite of their vanquished enemies, some brought back expensive weapons or jutsu scrolls. Naruto-kun came back with a new goddess. There was strange glow within his chest, and Sai wondered if this was what fondness felt like. It might even be amused fondness, though Sai wasn't sure how that felt different from the basic version. More research was needed. "Are you packed yet?" he asked. Naruto-kun nodded and pointed at his pack and something squarish and about the size of his head, or maybe there were many somethings, wrapped in kill me orange cloth mission rations, check. Chance of clothes, check. Bedroll and blankets, check. Kunai, shuriken and ninja wire, check. The checking list went on and on, ending with 70 packets of emergency instant ramen, check. Sai thought he really shouldn't feel so befuddled anymore. He knew how much Naruto-kun loved his ramen, but what in Kami-sama's name was emergency ramen? Never mind, maybe it was better to not know. "I don't think it pays to take it with you. We won't be allowed to light a fire, so you can't cook it," he pointed out sensibly. All color drained from Naruto-kun's face at his words, and his kohai turned his eyes heavenward, though instead of blue sky there was only dull gray concrete to plead with. "I have offended my gods," he announced desolately, then glaring angrily at the small, black stone. "What have I done to deserve this? Do you hate me?" Now Naruto-kun was fairly wailing and wringing his hands, his glare switching in a heartbeat into the most pathetic puppy dog eyes Sai had ever seen, wet and anxious and a little hopeful. "Maybe you should stop yelling at, them?" Sai was pretty sure Naruto-kun had used plural, gods. "Then they might hate you less," he prompted practically. He didn't know what deities Naruto-kun worshipped and what might or might not offend them, but not yelling at your gods had to work at least little, right? Then again, these were deities Naruto-kun had decided to follow, so there was no telling. "I'm taking the ramen anyway. I'll just seal it into a scroll. I'm sure that Fuchan has a kitchen," Naruto proclaimed, inexplicably happier again. A thought fluttered through Sai's head, how trying to keep track of Naruto-kun's mood swings was a bit like a carousel gone crazy, but it was chased away by odd, heavy feeling in his chest, like some illness of heart. Maybe it was sorrow, except it felt lazier somehow. Melancholy maybe? There was no way even Naruto could make it possible for them to sit together in Fusan's kitchen, eating ramen. Naruto-kun, he began hesitantly, not at all sure what he was going to say. His world was sensible and harsh black and white, or it had been before Naruto-kun. And nothing about Uzumaki Naruto was harshly defined. He was so open, not black and white at all, not even those elusive shades of gray that Danzo-san had warned him of, but every shade of rainbow, a new blinding shade of colorful life for every day of the week and 2 for Sundays. And Sai liked it, because when Naruto-kun was around, he could see the color in everything, too. He didn't want to be the one to douse Naruto-kun's rose-colored lenses. You can drop the kun, you know, Sai? Naruto-kun Naruto? Said. I can, Naruto? Sai didn't like the way his voice was hesitant, frowned upon the show of emotion by sheer habit alone, but if Naruto-kun noticed he didn't comment on it. Sure, it's bothersome to add the kun all the time. Ack, I'm turning into Shikamaru. Save me. He demanded, taking a lot more space than someone so relatively small should have been capable. Save him how? From what exactly? What was the essence of being a Shikamaru? Naruto gave him a friendly shove that almost made him fall flat on his face, and so they were even better friends, even before he had had the smallest chance of figuring out the Shikamaru rescue. Naruto sealed the ramen rations into a scroll with little difficulty, and Sai was reminded of the stories of him summoning Gamabunta. It seemed like Jiraiya-sama had taught Naruto-kun Naruto more than just that, and that made little cogs turn in Sai's head. The man was known to be flighty, but if it wasn't just one whimsical lesson, if Naruto had really been taken as Jiraiya-sama's student and he was still here, might it be? Maybe it was a really, really good thing Naruto would speak for him and Hibari-sensei if need be, just in case. And maybe Danzo-san wasn't quite the mastermind he was reputed to be, after all, because thus far recruiting Naruto had been one big mistake. They met Fu-senpai and Tomiko-san at the entrance to the tunnel that had been carved under the Hokage monument. Both had their masks on, dog and horse, and there were no expressions to read, but there was something about the way Fu-senpai was standing, the way his head was tilted just so that he might have been watching Naruto from the corner of his eye even as his head was turned towards the tunnel, that made those cogs turn in Sai's head some more. Fu-senpai's and Hibari-sensei's issues, matching like a lock and a key, matched Sai had been raised and trained from practically infancy to take advantage, and advantage he would take. The shadows hid his face and he lifted his pristine mask to his face to disguise the slight pull of a muscle. Never before had there been need to hide a smile. And so they slipped away from Root headquarters in Konoha without anyone being the wiser, just in time to miss the drama. Naruto was a walking one-man slapstick comedy, though, so they weren't lacking in entertainment. It's a lamb. That's even better than a bunny. At least Naruto was entertained, Sai though glumly. Dog-san and horse-san might have been, but it was hard to say for sure. They weren't the type to be easily entertained. My codename is Ram. Baza. Cutesy little lamb. Naruto's face was red with laughter. Kindly shut up. Two men stood on the top of a high, rocky hill that looked over the hidden village of Takigakure, though over a considerable distance, hidden from the sight of most by a small group of juniper trees and a high-level genjutsu. They both wore a black cloak adorned with red clouds, but that was where their obvious similarities ended. The beautiful, black-haired man also wore a conical straw hat with white stripes that covered his face, which the giant, blue shark man had thrown into a nearby stream a week ago. Also, there was the fact that Hoshigaki Kisame was a giant, blue shark man. He was also, at the moment, dangerously bored. What about the QB? He grumbled, eyeing a pebble near his foot. It was a nice pebble, rounded and heavy. Kicking it would be childish, kicking Itachi would result in a fight maybe. It was hard to say of the ice-cold bastard when they were supposed to avoid attention until they got Nakamura-fu in their sights, and in any case the bastard that had sent them to that second-rate village wasn't anywhere near to be kicked. He waits. He is the last, Pain had said, his gaze drifting to Itachi like trying to figure out what was going through his head, then turning back at Kisame. The Achibi will be hard to acquire until things quiet some in Sunagakure, so I will send you after the Nanami instead. It was insulting. To go from hunting the 9 tails to hunting the 7 tails was the most demeaning demotion ever. Okay, so Achibi would have been more humiliating, but still. There was a sudden blurry movement at the edge of Kisame's field of vision, but when he turned his head sharply it turned out to be only a duck, landing into a small pool of water behind them. That was the single saving grace of Taki Geikir, there was no shortage of water. Just a stupid, ordinary featherbrain. I wanted an ANBU, Kisame muttered, running his hand over the sheath of his sword. It wouldn't be his fault if the other side started the fight, right? A spot-billed duck to be precise. They are mainly gray with a paler head and neck and a black bill tipped bright yellow. The males also have a red spot at the base of the bill, Itachi corrected with bored monotone. Kisame gritted his teeth. I hate you, he said. The infuriating, androgynous man merely shrugged elegantly, a gesture only slightly ruined by the heavy black coat covering his shoulders. Gesturing all feminine like all the damn time was just begging for trouble as far as Kisame was concerned. Then he remembered something he had once heard in the wave, something totally irrelevant at the time, as it had been before he had joined Akatsuki and met his partner. It had been that one-eyed innkeeper that Kisame only remembered because the man hadn't been perturbed the least by a huge, grab-you-by-the-eyeballs blue man with a huge S-sword walking into his inn. It had been the punchline of some stupid, drunken joke after 10 big jars of really bad sake that he couldn't remember either, but he did remember. Isn't that spot called Sharingan in Wave? Kisame asked and was rewarded by the wonderfully satisfying sight of Itachi's whole body twitching. The laughter swelled deep in his stomach and burst out with bellowing roar. The laughed until he couldn't stand it anymore, literally as he dropped on his knees and laughed some more. Duck face, he managed to wheeze between snorts. Itachi twitched again. I will kill you, he said with real inflection in his voice. Kisame's eyes were full of mirth, much too boyish and innocent for a man like him dream on. Duckface, Kisame bellowed. The corners of Itachi's mouth turned up in a way that reminded a smirk enough to be recognizable. The swirling red and black caught Kisame's attention and kept it, dragging him down through black and something that rippled like water under a red moon. He dropped like a rock to the lush green grass, only to rise roaring in rage after a few seconds. These people are considered very dangerous among a group of people who stand a fair chance of conquering the known world despite the fact that there are only 8 of them. Whether it's funny or kind of sad is up to debate. When Sarutobi Hiruzen heard the approaching footsteps, he let his forehead briefly drop to his desk and groaned out loud. Many years as a Kage had taught him the importance of concealing his feelings, but Ataki Kakashi was driving him up to the limits of that control. It was made worse by the fact that he couldn't punish the man for his insubordination. Well, technically he could, but the voice in his mind that sounded very much like Minato made him hold his tongue. I want the villagers to treat him like a hero, the voice demanded. Little Naruto, who asked with wounded eyes why everyone hated him and Sarutobi couldn't answer, Jen and Naruto all but jumping up and down with glee for getting into an ANBU training program, walking with his escort like a lamb to a slaughter. Is this the best you can do for my child? Seriously? I should have let you have your way and sacrifice yourself instead. And so Sarutobi bore all the scathing questions and incessant pleading, accusations that mirrored eerily those he came up with on his own, and the footsteps approached, and then there were more footsteps, and he realized with a jolt of relief that this day's drama had been temporarily suspended. It was just a change of guard. He couldn't think about Naruto now, it wouldn't accomplish anything. He picked the quarter-yearly Mission Office Security Update report back up and forced himself to wade through it a lot easier now. For times a year he couldn't delegate this to his underlings, but now the day was so prettily cloudy, the lukewarm coffee in his cup white with ramen bowl print, he had gotten it from Naruto whom he really shouldn't be reminded of right now, smelled so delicious, and the paper was so pristine white with neat, contrasting black ink. And he could take care of it in peace, no one to distract him from his job. A door was slammed somewhere down, then there were footsteps thundering up the stairs, shrouded by killing intent, and Sarutobi lifted his face just in time to see how the seal-enforced door to his office exploded into a cloud of wooden splinters. Through this cloud marched slug Sannin Senju Tsunade, fires of unholy rage burning around her, and it took Sarutobi an ill-fated second to realize it was her chakra. Shizen-san was padding after her, begging her to calm down even as she grabbed Sarutobi from his collar and in an impressive display of power hoisted him over his desk one-handed. And behind this duo stood Kakashi-san, his one eye closed into a sunny smile, his gait languid, and Sarutobi just knew that he had been outmaneuvered now. Could you please let me down now, Tsunade-san? The ANBU get very nervous when I get beaten up. They are supposed to be protecting their Hokage, you know? He said. His voice was much calmer than he was. Don't you dare take that tone with me, Sarutobi Hiruzen. I came back because I figured that if Konoha had managed to breed and raise someone like Naruto-kun, things had changed. But I guess that's not how things are, Professor. She yelled, and Sarutobi winced at hearing that old moniker, his mind flashing back to the old, bad days of two great shinobi wars. You owe that boy a debt, even greater than the rest of Konoha, since you are the one Minato entrusted him to. And if you won't abort this mission yesterday, I will punch you through the Hokage monument, skin you alive and roll you in a barrel of salt, castrate you and send you to Iwa with a red ribbon tied around your neck, not necessarily in that order. She shook him with every thread hard enough to make his teeth clatter, her eyes burning like embers, and all Sarutobi could think was, it has been too long since she has gotten this passionate about anything. Viper and Thrush fluttered towards them from the shadows in a way unbefitting of ANBU or any Jonin, obviously wishing from the bottom of their hearts he wouldn't tell them to detain his enraged student. Danzo and his clique are those who caused most of these ops, who created Root in the first place. He begun to placate her and immediately cursed himself, hoping his current bodyguards had no ties to Danzo, because if this got out, Naruto-kun would be as good as dead. Maybe he should have them detained by Ibiki-sen just in case. So you decided to beat your enemy by becoming them? How Sasuke-esque route to take? Tsunade fairly purred now, letting him to regain his footing. Her voice was sweet enough to rot through his teeth and probably also his jawbone. My situation is completely different, he defended, but it was a feeble argument even in his own ears. There were parallels, even though his plan was actually legal and had a good chance of working, unlike the bout of cursed seal-induced idiocy that Uchiha Sasuke's defection had been. I could take offense on behalf of my student, Kakashi-san said with disgustingly smug voice, and Sarutobi had to forcibly remind himself of how he deserved it all, really, but I think I will rather enjoy the show. Plus, he was that stupid. Do defend your argument, Hokage-sama. Inquiring minds want to know. That traitor. I hope this isn't an inconvenient time. There are a question I would like to make, Hokage-sama, a polite, genteel voice interrupted the scene everyone was making. Sarutobi turned his head to look Irika-san, who had raised one eyebrow in that infuriating way he had always wanted to learn, but had only managed to wiggle both in a foolish manner. You are a friend of Naruto's, aren't you, Umino-san? Tsunade asked him, raising one of her eyebrows. How come everyone could do that except him? Well, yes, and very concerned right now. Irika-san smiled. He smiled just the same way Hiwatari-sensei had smiled when Sarutobi had been but a wet-behind-the-ears academy student, smiled the way that promised a nice, civilized conversation about how all practice kunai had been switched into rubber replicas, 1001 hand push-ups and a D-class cat retrieval mission. Brown hair, he told himself, not red, and Hiwatari-sensei hadn't had a scar on his nose either. Good. You can have what's left of him once I'm through, Tsunade promised grimly. Tsunade-sama, please, Thrush tried, taking half a step forward. Don't you dare please me. She snapped and flicked her finger towards the man, making him flinch. Tsunade-san, if you would let go of my robes. The Sanname Hokage attempted to defuse the situation. He was sure that distancing himself verbally from his student was only prudent now. His voice was polite, gentle, and long-suffering. The position he was in was more uncomfortable than he had remembered. Tsunade only gripped them tighter until her knuckles were as white as the cloth. You don't get a say in this, old man. Tar. Feathers. Gelding knife. Superglue, walnut groats, and 200 rabid squirrels. Do not tempt me. A cold, violent shiver ran up and down Sarutobi's spine and dropped into the bottom of his stomach like a cold rock. For all it was totally incomprehensive scenario, Tsunade was disturbingly good at threatening. Is Tsunade-sama threatening Hokage-sama? A girl's half-awed, half-horrified voice whispered from the door that had gone to the door's heaven. Again, everybody turned to look, this time at a group of genin, a boy and a girl, followed by a boy and a girl in even pairs. Somber and proper black and blue and pale, earthly ash stood beside a blinding smudge of princess pink. Ah, Sasuke-kun, Sakura-chan and friends. How can we help you? Kakashi-san asked with the air of someone who was immensely enjoying himself. For once he wasn't even bothering with the pretense of being distracted by porn. Some teacher you are. Sakura-san accused, pointing at him, red spots blooming on her cheeks. Kakashi-san assumed hurt if bemused expression. What exactly, were you going to tell us that Naruto is a Jinchuriki? Sasuke-san asked, and a heavy silence dropped on them, engulfed them, swallowed all words. Tsunade's breathing was tempest loud in Sarutobi's ears. Who told you this? He asked, thought racing. With as much dignity as he could muster, still being manhandled by Tsunade and watching them keenly. For pairs of angry eyes, even though the white pairs were more subdued. Sakura-san was gripping her shirt in her hands, Hinata-san was holding her hands on her hips and looking strangely assertive. None of them looked repulsed, and he prayed that they had had the good sense to not reveal their findings to anyone. We didn't need anyone to tell us, Hokage-sama. Naruto-san's condition has to be the worst protected S-class secret of all times. If this is all the subtlety Konohagakure is capable of, we are indeed in trouble. In fact, a regular vegetable should have found out before, and that we didn't doesn't reflect well on us, Niji-san lamented, looking at him in a way that might have been reproachful had it been less embarrassed. In truth, the shinobi of Konoha had been discreet, if not friendly. It was always the civilians who were difficult to coax, who didn't understand what was at stake. Oh, Sarutobi respected the civilian population of Konoha quite a lot. He felt that if a civilian could survive in a hidden village and not blink an eye if a stampede of angry, half-dressed kunoichi run by them throwing sharp, pointy things at giggling, white-haired man, or when all households were given order to use their blackout curtains out of blue and without explanation, they deserved the title of an honorary ninja. But even then, they were not that disciplined. So where Naruto-kun is, Hokage-sama? Sakura-san asked, and Sarutobi could have sworn she mumbled Shinaro. Under her breath. His eyes took in her and her comrades, turned to Kakashi-san and Tsunade, who was now holding him so close his eyes crossed, and then to Iruka-san, who was still smiling. He briefly prayed for a second invasion, or at least a nice, psychotic S-class assassin. Nakamura-fu of Takigakure no Sato wasn't bipolar, though that was what it said in most of other villages' files about her. She was simply a lonely girl that had gotten into the bad habit of letting the people around her define what she was. It should be noted that in Konoha people didn't feel any general antipathy towards the Jinchuriki, or at least hadn't before Sabaka no Gara, but specific antipathy towards the Kyuubi and anything associated with it. Fu really wasn't lucky. Nanabai no Kabutamushi had never as much as glared Takigakure wrong, but people shied away from Fu all the same. Many would switch to the other side of the road, avoid eye contact when forced to converse with her, civilians would refuse to serve her, shinobi kept their hands near their weapons at all times. Where Naruto had decided to become the owner of the known world's brightest jumpsuit and prank people, Fu had become desperately eager to please. She had a caretaker named Nishimura Fuyumi and a private sensei named Yukimura Masayoshi. They made a Mura combination. Her sensei would often laugh. He preferred that Fu was bright and cheerful and boisterous, because that was surely a sign that her Biju hadn't gotten foothold yet. Nishimura was an old-fashioned woman who had decided that since Fu was working with the handicap of being a Jinchuriki, she should at least behave like a proper woman, quiet and gently obedient with passive body language and good manners, if she ever wanted to get married. They both only wanted for her best. When she was quiet, Yukimura-sensei worried. When she was cheerful, Nishimura Obaasama was disappointed. Poor Fu couldn't decide which one to please. This was one of her quiet months, and it would come to an end soon enough. She couldn't bear the haunted look on Yukimura-sensei's face much longer. Fu sat down in front of the hearth in her Obasama's house and took a deep green tortoiseshell, sawn and polished into pot-shaped pentangular piece, from a wooden box she had asked her sensei buy for this specific purpose. This was a costly way of divination, but it wasn't like she had much to spend her money into. It was also kind of hard to do since it required several days of purification in a week during which she hadn't just killed someone or wasn't being sent to kill someone were hard to come by. What will the next cycle be like? Will this be the last, or will I lose my resolve once more? She whispered in the dim room. It was bright midday outside, but she had closed the blinders for this. Maybe it was silly, but she just couldn't do divination without proper atmosphere. Fu had learned this from an old Buddhist nun who lived near the hidden village Takigakure, a serene old woman with wrinkled face, white hair and white eyes that couldn't see that the hair of the nice, polite girl who often visited her was bright, vivid green, the mark of a Biju. She had 5 thinly split sticks of bamboo lined up across the mouth of a red pot filled with water. Within each hollow carved into the shell was a symbol written onto a magical line with black ink. She took a branch of black cherry tree, mindful of the bandaged wrist that had earned her 5 days vacation, burned it in a purifying fire, then placed against each of the magical lines to scorch them. Soon she could hear the first sharp crack and the first fissures appeared on the shell's upper side opposite the lines. She quickly poured cold water using the bamboo sticks onto 3 spots of the shell's upper surface, making the cracks stand out more clearly, and looked at them, her brow soon burrowing in bewilderment. "I'm going to be in mortal peril, but good things will come of it, brother?" This wasn't what she had been trying to look into at all, and besides, that'll be the day. Things like that never happened to people like her. All she would ever get out of mortal peril was broken bones. "You are going to recall Naruto-kun, or else." "Or else what?" "It is illegal to geld your Kage, you know." It should be noted that Sarutobi Hiruzen was a brave man. He had fought in 2 great ninja wars. He was known as the god of shinobi. If chips ever went down, he would readily sacrifice his life for the best of his village. "But, as the head Orrunan of Konoha Hospital, I can override you in medical matters. I will declare you unfit for duty, make you eat hospital food until Naruto-kun comes back, make you attend therapy where you will have to keep daily diary of your innermost feelings and play with a pink, squishy ball and wear green paper gown the whole time, carry out painful rectal examinations on you, let my interns use you as a practice dummy when they first learn acupuncture, confiscate all contraband literature, and the new, experimental medication just might have the unfortunate side effect of erectile dysfunction. But no one is quite that brave." And, in the end, Sarutobi had never been happier to lose. It should also be counted in favor of him that he yielded before Okubo Hibari walked through the demolished door carrying a pile of papers higher than her tanto was long. Mission, root of the issue, abandoned. New mission, save Jinchuriki Naruto, or Tsunade-sama will make responsible parties suffer horribly, commence. Suborn Count, 2. Chapter 8, Day 15, Afternoon. Not impressed, Tsunade had firmly taken control of the Naruto retrieval operation. Plan A, which wouldn't involve any violence at all and was Plan A because of that, was Okubo Hibari intercepting the squad Naruto had been sent out with and convincing them that their Danzo-sama had aborted the mission. It was simple, but that was its strength. Sai-san wouldn't protest and Horse and Dog had no reason to believe Okubo-san was lying. Plan B, in case they detected the deception, was for Hatake Kakashi to reveal himself and hand over the real orders, signed by Saname Hokage. Tsunade didn't for a second believe that Danzo's pet fanatics would obey, but the purpose was to play time and keep Horse and Dog distracted while Yamato-san sneaked behind them, grabbed Naruto and captured them with his willing helpers. It was hard to avoid plants in a forest. This might be averted by Naruto taking matters to his own hand and removing himself from the situation, a scenario called Circumstance B1. A lot more likely Circumstance B2 was Naruto beginning to argue with his squad-cum-captors, which would most likely end in fight as Yamato couldn't get to him without being noticed. It wasn't as if Naruto couldn't defend himself and he had Sai-san for backup. Still, Horse and Dog were ANBU and therefore very dangerous, especially in hostage situations, and so Tsunade had included herself as well. Not that she would have remained behind in any case, but that was beside the point. Sarutobi-sama had protested, saying that Tsunade was needed in the hospital, but she had countered by saying that her skills would come of use when everything unavoidably went to hell in the proverbial handbasket. Akatsuki crashed their party. Scenario C was Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame crashing their party. Knocked out Nakamura-fu was optional. Uchiha Sasuke couldn't be included since there was no way in heaven or hell that Tsunade was trusting him in the country his brothers had been sighted at if she could help it. Haruno Sakura couldn't be included since that would have been playing favorites and it wasn't like she had anything to contribute to the mission. Hyuga Niji was included since his Byakugan should come useful when searching for the root squad and he could be counted on to get Naruto and run if, when, Akatsuki got involved, also to drag Naruto away by force since he didn't have the sense of self-preservation the kami gave to a lemming on drugs. The squad Naruto was sent out with has gained a good head start, but they have no reason to run all the way to Takigakure. We should be able to catch up with them before anything too permanent happens to anyone, Tsunade said. Any questions? Niji shook his head absent-mindedly, concentrating on something else entirely. He had his Byakugan activated and so he could see Uchiha-san, Haruno-san and his cousin huddling together just outside the Hokage Tower, having a conversation that appeared to be whispered, but spiced with wild, angry gesturing, at least on Haruno-san's part. Uchiha-san was still, but his face spoke whole volumes for once, and Hinata-sama looked nervous. She was fiddling her thumbs in a painfully familiar manner. Surely they couldn't mean to go out on their own? Uchiha-san wasn't an epitome of good sense, but he was still on parole. Surely even he would understand how leaving the village unauthorized would be dealt with? Surely Hinata-sama could speak some sense into Naruto-san's less than disciplined teammates. Niji was going to speak his mind to Tsunade-sama, but then a group of ANBU marching towards the tower caught his attention. People walking in the streets stopped to stare after them. Merchants' charts came to a screeching halt and the trio at the root of the tower turned to stare. Between tall, imposing figures in green vests, their faces hidden behind white porcelain painted to resemble rooster, monkey, dog and hare walked Councilman Danzo. His clothes were torn and bloody, his hands were tied behind his back, he was blindfolded and led roughly by the one with rooster mask. Also, Rooster's body language was looking mightily angry now that Niji paid attention to it. ANS when he looked his cousin and Naruto-san's teammates were gone, and it was time for them to go also. The three of them couldn't be stupid enough to leave Konoha, and however angry Uchiha-san and Haruno-san might be at Danzo-san, surely they couldn't do anything too idiotic in Konoha either. Pretty much every culture has a proverb or two about the negative consequences of making assumptions. That is for a reason. Haino Kuni was a land of striking scenic beauty and the forest surrounding Kanahagakure no Sato was remarkable even by those standards. The dense forest had lovely gems, rugged peaks, snow-fed lakes so clear you could see all the way to the golden sand at the bottom even in the middle of the lake, and so cold swimming in those would have been night suicidal, turbulent rivers, rocky gorges and even small waterfalls. No one ever got to see this except the ninjas, since it was an area under Konoha military law, trespassing disallowed, regularly patrolled and just generally forbidden. All that regular travelers ever saw of Konoha forest were the winding, confusing roads where the courier Nin firmly escorted them, making sure no one took unauthorized side trips. Of course there were areas that were forbidden for entirely different reason, the closest to Konoha being 44th Training Ground, also called Forbidden Forest. Just because someone is a kick-ass shinobi who makes his own hidden village doesn't mean they are good at naming things. From the outside those areas looked like your typical, run-of-the-mill forest, the insides were an entirely different story. In those places the forest was so thick that even in high noon it wasn't hard to find places completely surrounded by darkness. Those spots were inhabited by giant, venomous centipedes with ugly, pinkish-red, bloated bodies, giant, venomous snakes and pretty much giant, venomous everything. Naruto and his ANBU comrades were now running over one of those pretty, snowy cold lakes. They were running quickly, thanks to Naruto keeping breakneck pace. He wasn't one of those temperature as a matter of discipline type of shinobi, he was only wearing his military-issue sandals and the surface of the lake was freezing. Since it was also one of those dangerous spots, there were venomous, giant leeches that would chase them and try to both suck them dry and poison them. That was the other reason they were running. If my toes turn black and fall off, it's all your fault, he grumbled to his comrades who had all summarily refused to walk around the lake since they would have been taking an unnecessary detour and the route didn't take those. The route had great discipline and very cold feet. And damn those overachievers. But that wasn't directed at Sai, Tomiko-chan and Fusan, but at the leeches who made yet another attack, making the water break in the sun. Naruto dodged and distracted them with a Kage Bunshin. What's the difference between poisonous and venomous anyway? Why are there two words for the same thing? He asked, not from anyone particular. If it bites you it's venomous, if you bite it it's poisonous, Sai was the one to answer. And they reached the shore in a part of the forest that at least looked like it hosted nothing more dangerous than some boars. They didn't stop running. That can happen to shinobi at times, they are just so used to the physical exertion that it comes as easily as walking to them. For Naruto it was even more, it was natural like breathing. The one, blessedly harmless flaw of Yandame's seal, the constant bleeding of the Kyubi no Yoko's chakra into his system, made Naruto bounce and shout, attack every obstacle with gusto and generally pest hapless, stuffy, elders and keep running since the brain synapses that would have told normal person to stop because it drained them and killed their legs had been fried years ago. Naruto was a live example of the law of inertia by Rikudo Sennin, an object that is in motion will not stop its motion until some other force stops it, and in his case friction wasn't going to cut it. Naruto ran, his comrades ran since they didn't really have any reason to stop, and unknown to them rescue team Tsunade ran after them, but didn't gain any. It was a good day to run too, the weather was great and the sunlight that filtered through the thick, green leaves warm. They ran through woodland where the trunks of the trees were swarming with gold beetles. Naruto didn't know if gold beetle was a real name or just a made-up term of his childhood, but those bustling, glittering bug rugs reminded him of his early childhood, when the orphanage hadn't yet decided they'd had all they could take. Naruto had slipped his caretakers at least once a week and sneaked into the part of village that the keepers always warned their charges from going, just because. It had been a lot less exciting than Naruto had expected, in hindsight, because he hadn't understood what was supposed to be so exciting about those women with their faces painted white and red. But he had met the Gold Beetle Man there. The Gold Beetle Man's real name had been Aburame Hero, and he had been a retired shinobi. He had been strange looking with his thin, long neck, sharp angled face and huge eyes with the opaque film of cataract, dressed in shapeless coat of a color hard to identify, but what had caught little Naruto's interest had been his pet beetles, almond-sized green and golden bugs tied into little leashes made of cotton threads. This reminds me of this one guy I knew when I was little. One of the few people who were nice to me back then, he told Sai. He told of how even after he had lost his colony of Kakai since his chakra system couldn't take the strain anymore, he had taken in the beetles since he didn't feel right without little feet skittering all over them. He even let me pet them since I promised to be careful to not hurt any. They would fly in circles over his head like some strange cloud. Shino-san was really surprised I wasn't freaked out by his bugs, and that's why. He told me about his shinobi days and bitched about the whoopee ninja a lot. I met few of those too in Yuki no Kuni. They were playing when people got killed. Naruto twisted his mouth. Princess Koyuki was cool and deserved better nobility than that. What does a whoopee mean? Sai asked. Naruto had to think about it. He had never before put it in words. It's the stupid, rich nobles who want to learn jutsu that makes things explode a lot. Let me give you examples. Real ninja want to protect their village and precious people, or the country and daimyo. The bad ones do it for money or because they like killing. Whoopee ninja want to win bar brawls and pick up girls. And boy, had Gold Beetle Man bitched about those. He was too old to take on fighting missions, and thus he was the designated victim when someone with too much money and time offered a hefty pay to learn the ninja arts, only totally basic D-rank jutsu and academy-level kunai throwing. Not that the customers were told that. They thought they were kick-ass fighters after 10 lessons. Real ninja study since early childhood, first as a group and later under more individual tutelage, Sai prompted him. Naruto couldn't see his face thanks to the too cute lamb mask, but he chose to believe that Sai was smiling under it. A real, honest smile. It would be a little small, but it was a beginning. Before Sai knew it, he would be converted into Ramanism and the service of Blessed Orange. Whoopee ninja hire a teacher for a week at a time cause they are emo teenagers and want to do cool stuff. Not that he didn't like doing cool stuff, but it was just his reason number 6. When real ninja create new jutsu, they do so knowing the exact difference the different hand seals will make. Tomiko-chan joined in. Tomiko-chan always treated him nice, even though she subjected him and every other male en route to eating her horrendous attempts at cooking, but her eyes and voice were always so flat. She was just the same Sai had been, except better at pretending, like some kind of zombie kunoichi going through the motions, but Naruto wouldn't have been that surprised if she had started moaning about brains. At times he even got the feeling she wasn't really that bad in the kitchen, because it just wasn't humanly possible, but that she was being bad at something because real people were bad at something. Naruto hated it when he got hunches like that. Why did it always have to be something hurtful? Couldn't he ever get a hunch that somebody was about to have a normal life with marriage and 2 kids and not Neen Dog and a goldfish? Whoopee ninja changed the snake into dragon since that makes the jutsu more powerful, right? He said, and Tomiko-chan actually winced. Just few weeks ago Naruto wouldn't have seen how it was that big a deal, but then Hibari-sensei had taught him the vampire jutsu, and also told him that to make that little change would turn it into heart-exploding suicide jutsu. Who would have thought? Sai poked Fusan, and this could quickly get really confusing, having 2 Fusaran first gently and then firmly. Fusan turned to look at him and Sai tilted his head. Now Naruto was sure that the plastic smile was on place again. Baby steps, he thought, baby steps. Apparently Sai thought something similar about the man he had been pecking like a bird, because he pointed at Naruto, having decided that even play pretend subtlety was right out. Fusan sighed and gave in gracefully. Real ninja have their weapons custom made the second they can afford it, he said. Naruto was beginning to enjoy this game. Whoopee Ninja have daddy's credit card and lots of catalogs. He was grinning. Then he realized no one was going to see it and got frustrated. Being expressive sucked when no one could see your face. Sure, he knew the shinobi rules said something about concealing your feelings, or maybe it was to not have any, but as a barefoot Konoha native taught by Kakashi-sensei, and one who had almost killed a really nice gender-confused person called Haku who had then gone and died anyway, Naruto knew it was rubbish. Real shinobi made their own Nindo, and Naruto's was to never be less than he was. And he was expressive, damn it. He had to take this up with old man Hokage. The ANBU were trying to oppress him. And Danzo jerk was an evil mastermind. He probably kicked puppies for a hobby and stole candy from babies. I have also met a few of those, though only in passing, Fusan volunteered. He spoke slowly, almost like he wasn't sure he should be talking at all. There are rich lordlings in Edo who alone support half the prefecture's blacksmiths and seal makers. Don't feel too sorry for them, dog, Tomiko-chan Horse-chan, he should call her that since they were all masked up warned him. With the allowance their rich daddies give them, they can afford it. And I know some perfectly nice blacksmiths in the capital who should only soap them for every yen they can get. And her voice wasn't so flat anymore. There was something in it, primness and a hint of something else. Naruto guessed she liked blacksmiths for some reason. Blacksmiths? He had wondered about that for quite some time. Have you ever thought about the color scheme thing? He asked Sai. Not that he was excluding Horse-chan and Dog-san, he made a point to never exclude anyone, but Sai was the one he was looking at. Color scheme of what? Sai asked him back. You know how the bad guys always wear black, right? And practicing the dark arts is a bad thing and the light side is the good guys. Smith is the person who makes smithy things, so is being called blacksmith some kind of moralist statement? 'Cause he could see how Buddhists thought that making weapons was wrong. Maybe their propaganda had infiltrated the shinobi world's unconscious. Not the kind of unconsciousness that left you lying on your back with bump in your head, but the not conscious level of thinking unconscious, or was it subconscious? And now everybody was looking at him. Fusan came within a hair's breadth from running into a tree, and from ANBU that was something. Sometimes I really wonder how your mind works, Sai spoke his mind. Naruto shrugged. Lots of people do. My thought processes made the psych ninja cry once, in the academy, when they were making sure we weren't going to go nuts and kill people on them if they taught us something. Or it could have been the wasabi I put in her coffee. I'm not sure. Everything in Naruto was at violent odds with what he should have been. He was honest and open about his many bonds when shinobi should destroy their hearts, he was obvious when shinobi should be subtle, he was an honorable fighter when the shinobi had been created to do the daimyo's dirty work so their precious samurai could retain their honor, he was overwhelmingly cheerful in the face of the world's most grim profession, the service of the Shinigami, the grim reaper of all lives. He was a killer with the body count of round zero, the Jinchuriki of the strongest of the tailed beasts with no blood on his hands. She who was called Tomiko had a hard time trying to comprehend him. But this was what got to her the most, he was Uzumaki and the Jinchuriki of Kyubi no Yoko. Those words had no business to be in the same language together, let alone the same sentence. It had been years since Tomiko had felt rage, the last of it burning out when Uzumaki Yugao had changed her name into Yuzuki Yugao, but when she watched Uzumaki Naruto she found she could still feel indignant. Whoopee Ninja changed the snake into dragon since that makes the jutsu more powerful, right? Naruto-san said, making her wince. She didn't like the root, but then she didn't like anything these days, and at least she had never had to deal with idiots like those. To change the snake into dragon would turn the focus reverse or intensify a jutsu, depending from the whole. Naruto-san made Tomiko wonder about herself. She was loyal to Danzo-sama, she truly was. He was her rock in the world built on shifting sands, the one who understood the importance of protecting Konoha by any means necessary and the one true Nindo. So why, when she thought of Naruto-san and Root, she thought of Danzo-sama as one of those wannabe ninja fools changing hand seals without doing their research? Why did she think that if he was stupid enough to do that day 15.1, suborn count 2? Recorded by the surveillance seal, Whoopee Ninja Bashing. Chapter 9, Interlude 2, Little Free Time is a Dangerous Thing. 2 weeks ago Haiden was partnered with Akasuna no Sasori when the puppeteer's partner, Mori Deidara, was temporarily indisposed. Pain policy on blowing up Akatsuki premises was that the culprits fixed what they broke. Without the aid of any jutsu, they wouldn't learn their lesson otherwise. Some didn't learn it even then, as Deidara proved again and again, and when Pain wanted an independent Fuinjutsu master working for the daimyo of Tsuchi no Kuni turned into a puppet and a spy, he gave Sasori Haiden for backup. It turned out to be a particularly bad match, which was surprising. Sasori possessed a very down-to-earth outlook on life, rarely getting worked up over obstacles that came his way and rarely showed any extreme emotions. Haiden considered slaughter a religious calling and often took considerable pleasure in making his opponents' deaths as painful as possible, but because of this he preferred individual deaths by his hand. He wasn't that much into mechanical, soulless mass destruction. They should have been functional partners at least, if not bosom buddies. It wasn't like anyone did that in Akatsuki except Pain and Conan. Instead, Haiden pissed Sasori off and Sasori egged Haiden into showing off. What part of turn Higurashi-san into a puppet involves the complete destruction of his body and the stronghold he was staying at? Haiden-san? Sasori-san? Pain asked, prompting both of his subordinates to stand up a little straighter, but in Haiden's case, it was more indignation than anything. There was a pregnant pause as he eyed Sasori and the doll boy eyed him back. He started it. Haiden declared, his finger lifting to skewer the other. Sasori took a sidestep before it connected and bowed to Pain. My apologies, Pain-sama. It will not happen again, he kissed up. Haiden sneered at him. Unlike the other pansies, he didn't respect their leader any despite acknowledging his power and wasn't above occasionally threatening him with gruesome death, not thinking much of his sanity. Obtaining a filthy lot of money, then driving all the hidden villages bankrupt by taking missions below usual costs and getting everybody dependent on them in the Biju, then turning on everyone and conquering the world wasn't a bad plan, but doing this for world peace? Haiden fucking hated nutcases, but he hated hypocrites more, and Pain was both. We could just kill the daimyo. It's not like he won't wind up dead down the road anyway, he proposed. It was times like this that being the leader of a bunch of psychotic, absurdly powerful ninja that didn't want world peace had its downsides. Haiden didn't envy him any. Sasori-san informed Deidara-san that he is released from punishment duty. Haiden-san, take over the rebuilding of the northeast wing. With no jutsu. Pain's voice was actually shaking. Haiden smirked. And he remembered. Flee! Flee before the scourge of Jashin-sama. He had roared, his triple-bladed scythe flashing through the ranks of cookie-cutter ninja swarming him with great, crimson swipes. He absorbed their ninjutsu with a smirk. He slashed through their taijutsu with his scythe. They tried genjutsu and he laughed to their faces, calling on the power of his most glorious god with his sinful heart, and his skin turned black and bone-white. The greatest thrill, to maim and kill. Sasori charged in beside him with his human puppets, living corpse puppets, delicious, disgusting defilement of life and death. Then the explosions began. Haiden's eyes actually misted from sheer bliss as he recalled the explosions. Ah, the glorious blood crimson and pale yellow and death white explosions that destroyed the stronghold and a quarter-mile of landscape around it. He had salted the ground that still smelt like charred flesh and bones for good measure. I regret nothing. 7 days ago Haiden regretted not having killed that bastard nitfucking Pain. He had fixed the holes on the roof. There had been more holes than roof left, and gotten his hands, hair and robes black with tar. Some of it was still caked under his fingernails after 3 days, and the subtle smell lingering around him was making him go nuts. He had repaired the doors, window casings and windows, and now it was time to make cabinets to replace the ones Deidara's bout of idiocy had blown into toothpicks. He'd had enough. He stormed the cabinet that passed for their mission office and started going through ongoing missions. What caught his eye was the manila folder identified with red shoe, yellow nan and green number 7, Uchiha Itachi, Hashigaki Kisame and the Jinchuriki of Nanabai no Kabutomushi. He leafed through it and an angelic smile lit his face up. She was the third strongest by tail count and seemed to have decent training. She could probably give him a proper workout, and even if she didn't, fighting Itachi and Kisame for having stolen their thunder was bound to rid him of his frustration and the persistent sensory memory of the smell of tar and sawdust. He gritted his teeth and caressed the handle of his scythe, then grimaced apologetically. All that menial work had given him calluses. Not the kind of calluses handling weapons would give a person, but the calluses of someone wielding a hammer and those who were unworthy of touching his weapon. Great Jashin-sama, once the world has been conquered, I swear to give all those who practice the vile art of carpentry to you as an offering," he declared, not really thinking about how he would have to do his own carpentry from then on. Villains tend to drop the ball like that at times. Maybe he would take a short detour through the nearby mountain? Some Buddhist hermits lived up there and they would make nice starters. To get himself into the proper spirit of things. 6 days ago Naruto had stripped down to his pants and was resting on all fours, forehead and forearms flat against the sweat-damp red tatami. Hibari-sensei had moved like she had no spine when she had showed this exercise to him, but it was a lot more difficult in practice. Maybe it was because he actually had a real bone spine and not some strange ANBU superning gelatin back? He took a deep breath and aligned his shoulders, relaxed his hands and shifted his hips. "Balance," he told himself, "you can keep it. Believe it." He stretched first his right and then his left leg back and up. He exhaled and steadied himself, the vertical line of his body taut, toes now pointing up towards the roof that his last attempt at C-class Winjutsu had scraped all the plaster from the day before. Even his hard shoulder muscles bunched, but Naruto gritted his teeth, concentrated fiercely and bent his legs, tipping forward, spine bowing. Beside him Sai was holding his position with ease, had been holding it the last 10 minutes like he had done this exercise his whole life. Hibari-sensei was standing in front of him, but all he could see of her were her hakama-clad legs. Naruto growled and curled his whole body until he felt the tap of his heels atop his head. "Yes! Tiger Scorpion Asana! I did it!" He twisted his neck as far as he could, but still could only see Hibari-sensei's waist. What was the point again?" "Yoga will make you more flexible and teach you some self-discipline," Hibari-sensei said. Naruto's muscles were already aching, obviously this was one of those for your own good things. "Good luck with that," he grunted. He wasn't trying to be sarcastic. "I guess that self-awareness isn't too bad either," Hibari-sensei sighed. "And be quiet. It will be easier if you regulate your breathing better." Not that talking made it better, but Naruto was still convinced that human spine just wasn't supposed to bend that way. But there was no way he was doing some wimpy lotus sitting when Sai was going for the most difficult position in the handbook. And later he could torture Sasuke with one more he could do and Sasuke could not. Mwahaha. But Sasuke, torture and evil, silent, laughter reminded him of something, not that he thought Itachi was the type to laugh. "Do you know of any other Akatsuki members than Itachi and Kisame?" Naruto asked Hibari-sensei. "Classified information," she said and corrected Naruto's ankles. He didn't see what the difference mattered, but whatever. "But they are after me. Shouldn't I know so I can better protect myself?" He moaned and dropped out of the position. Hibari-sensei didn't relent, but later that evening, when it was time to go to sleep, he launched an attack on Sai. It took him over half an hour of wheedling, though he mostly suspected that Sai gave in just so Naruto would shut up and they could both get some sleep. Naruto kind of wanted to smack himself unconscious by the time Sai relented. The bed covers were so warm and he was tired, but if he didn't insist, he would never find out anything important. "I only know of one and I'm not supposed to, so don't tell anyone. His name is Haydn, I don't know his family name, and he is a Jashinist." Sai's eyes glittered gloomy in the dim light that filtered in from under the door. "What's Janshin?" Naruto asked. "He is an evil god." Sai turned his back to Naruto to signal the end of conversation. What kind of idiot goes out of his way to make themselves a walking cliché? "I mean, evil god?" But he let it go to avoid being murdered in his sleep. The evil god Janshin followed Naruto into his dreams, in the form of a bizarre, maniacally cackling giant bunny that had lots of tails, but it was hard to say how many since they all resembled one giant fluff ball. It burned down a lot of stuff until Gaara appeared out of nowhere and gave it a desert funeral. After that it became an undead zombie god and two men carrying a piano entered the dream. After that, Naruto dreamed of ramen and nothing else for the rest of the night. Everybody sees bizarre dreams every once in a while and mostly nothing comes of it, except some very strange looks when the dreamers try to recite them to their friends. But now, Naruto's mind had firmly connected Janshin and evil bunnies. Ouch! Chapter 10, Days 15 to 16, Damsel in Distress, Part 1. It wasn't that Uchiha Sasuke didn't understand why he wasn't included in rescuing his teammate. He just didn't like it. He and Sakura-san were Naruto Baka's teammates, damn it. Had he known of Itachi, he would have liked it even less, most likely to the point where he would have up and left, consequences be damned, and Sakura would have left with him. As it was, he got distracted by his flair for vengeance. It begun when he saw the ANBU walking councilman Danzo by them, not paying the slightest bit of attention to 3 genin as they led the traitorous man into the tower, supposedly to be interrogated by the Hokage before being turned over for the interrogation department. Sasuke remembered Ibiki-san, and had it been someone else, he might have acknowledged how undesirable the man's situation was, if not actually pitted him. But now all he felt was fury that the man had gotten off easy. Sasuke wasn't a Naruto kind of shinobi. His view of the world was much dimmer, his opinion of people much lower, and he was very apt at reading between lines what, the adults, his superiors would have preferred he didn't. Fact 1, Danzo-san had forced Naruto-san into an illegal branch of ANBU, no doubt planning on using the Jinchuriki to further his traitorous goals. Fact 2, there was no way Naruto-san would have taken that lying down the idiot didn't understand the concept of lying to save his skin. Fact 3, now Naruto was somewhere unspecified and Senju Tsunade herself was included in the rescue team. Conclusion, Naruto was fucked Naruto-san. Naruto-san was fucked and now the Hokage had the gall to forbid Sasuke from joining the rescue. Additional fact, the only reason Danzo-san had gotten his slimy paws on Naruto-san was because the Hokage had allowed him to, in order to use Naruto as a spy. Naruto, a spy. A spy in an organization led by someone as ruthless as Danzo. Sasuke wasn't only mad, he was enraged beyond anything he had ever felt if Itachi didn't count, and the one he intended to take his feeling out on was marching right past him. Naruto-san had sort of become Sasuke's best friend almost by default, or as close to a best friend Sasuke could ever allow himself to have with those red pinwheel eyes of his brother forever haunting the edges of his consciousness. He wasn't in the mood to be obedient. "Come with me now," he hissed and grabbed both Sakura-san and Hinata-san by wrist, dragging them away from the tower and calculating a distance that was far enough to not be seen as loitering around, but still within Hinata-san's Byakugan's range. A sudden motion caught his eye, but it was only an empty paper bag the wind carried. "Why, you aren't going to do anything inadvisable, are you?" Hinata-san whispered like one who knew the answer already. "You are still on parole, don't mess it up." Sakura-san hissed at him fiercely. Sasuke glared at them. He had learned to glare people into submission at early age. That idiot Naruto has gotten over his head and Danzo-san is at fault. "We are going to have a conversation." Hinata-san gave in first, as expected. Sasuke wasn't blind, he knew she had it bad for Naruto, as bad as Sakura-san for him. Of course, Hinata-san was a lot less annoying about her feelings. "You are going to have a conversation with who? What has this got to do with Naruto-kun, and what are you getting my teammate into?" The bark of a puppy accompanied the words. Now there were heirs to 3 clans and one self-declared bride of one of them. Konoha nights were like Konoha days, more often than not full of politic intrigue, in a lot of good ways and bad too. At times it was even completely accidental. Takigakure wasn't an easy place to sneak into. Despite what its name suggested, it wasn't particularly hidden in the middle of the plains of Taki no Kuni, but being surrounded by endless, hopelessly flat fields of rice and wheat made sneaking in while trying to stay hidden a bitch of a job. True, there was a small forest near the village and some peaks, not to mention the waterfall the village had been named after and the giant tree in the middle of it, but to get to that cover, one had to sneak through the surrounding landscape. Landscape that was very well patrolled and full of small outposts. "I have a better plan," Naruto said, giving the wet rice fields a hairy eyeball. It was very idyllic looking, painted deep red by the setting sun, but crawling through knee-deep water all night long and sleeping in muddy banks sounded plain stupid. It was going to be cold, wet, dirty, wet, slow, wet, and just what would Fuchan think if she saw them covered in mud from head to toe? "What is it?" Fusan asked. Naruto liked this about ANBU, they always listened. They didn't always think his ideas were so great, like when he had proposed they have an office party, he had already made the hot cocoa and gotten the ramen too, but they listened first. They always remembered that even though they couldn't think of a better plan, someone else might. "We go in as clients. We are going to have to travel through the Tano Kuni and there are all those freak missing ninja running around free, so we are going to need the protection," he improvised. "Ha, they got to blame it all on Orochimaru." That always made Naruto's day. The idea has some merit, but they would see our faces, Fusan mused, stroking the handle of his sword. And we would have to leave most of our weapons behind. True, Naruto hadn't thought that far. He had just wanted to avoid crawling his way to Takigakure, but now he was on a roll. But he met the weaknesses in his plans the same way he met other obstacles, not retreating, not choosing another route, but finding a way to push through. That's easy enough. You guys are A and BU, so you learn new jutsu quick, right? Just look at this. And with a single-hand seal ram he was covered with white smoke. And when it evaporated, this was what Naruto had turned as his Hyuga variation of the technique since he had modeled it after them, minus the eyes, and because it was the classy one and Hinata-chan was classy. He was about as tall as he always was but a lot more slender, with long, dark brown hair and brown eyes and dressed in simple orange traveling kimono and a funny, pointy straw hat. His skin was pale and there were no possession marks on his cheeks. He looked, in short, like any of Hinata's cousins if not for his eyes. Oh, and he had breasts of course. Sai wasn't surprised since he had seen enough of random gender bending already, but Tomiko-chan frowned. She first cupped Naruto's right breast, making him blush and stutter, and then placed her hand on Naruto's shoulder. Why am I always plagued by perverts? Naruto moaned. Tomiko-chan snorted. Kai, she tried to release the genjutsu. Nothing happened and Naruto looked at her oddly. Most genjutsu can be broken with that. Most henge doesn't pass the touch test either, she explained her actions and knitted her brows. That's not a simple genjutsu. It wasn't a question. Well, I was really bad at henge because it used so little chakra I always broke it, but I found I could do it if I pushed the chakra through my body and spent the extra inside instead of just putting it over me. Kakashi-sensei had once said that Naruto trying to do a D-rank jutsu was a bit like trying to fill a glass from a dam hatch. It didn't matter how careful you were with the glass, unless you did something about the water pressure, it broke. And, well, his control had gotten better in the route thanks to Hibari-sensei's tablets, but it still wasn't anything to write home about. Firefly, that sounds more like a ninjutsu, Sai said slowly, and Naruto realized he had never explained to him how he did it before. Yeah, he knew that using ninjutsu to change the body was supposed to be incredibly dangerous and all, but it was the academy teacher's fault, except Irika-sensei's. Nobody told me henge was supposed to be genjutsu before I made this, he complained. He could almost see Sai rolling his eyes at him under the very cute, if a bit maniac-looking, lamb mask. What if it was possible to see through things without the Byakugan? Gaara could see with that sand eyeball of his, but since he used pure chakra where Gaara used sand, maybe he could see through it somehow. Firefly Kohai, please pay attention, Fusan commanded him sharply. Naruto rubbed his hair embarrassed. Sorry, but I just got the coolest idea. And he referred it, of course. Why not? They were all Konoha ninjas, so they were allies, and besides, Sai and Tomiko-chan were friends too. Silence reigned. There are several academy teachers I would like to kill for wasting a resource like you, Fusan said eventually. Naruto was torn between being happy his new team leader thought he was intelligent and blustery since he wasn't a resource. Kami, damn it. So. Firefly, you are Yagami Natsu, Ram, Yagami Sakaki. You are siblings, on your way to live with your husband in Tano Kuni's capital. One husband. What a dirtbag. I'm going there to geld him. Naruto declared. Only to wilt a second later, it was scary how well Fusan could glare through the mask. Maybe he had some secret chakra eyeball jutsu? Horse, you are Yagami Toshiro, their older brother who escorts them. Natsu-san, you will find a way, tonight, to apply the Oiroke no Jutsu, Fusan said it like it tasted dirty on his tongue, into our weapons and packs. I will be a wandering medicine seller, Masahiko Furiko, who travels the same way with you. It is a good cover for my poisons. Tomorrow we will travel as civilians. He gave Naruto a last appraising look before turning to put up their camp, reciting the details of their cover story at the same time. Again, Naruto, not knowing how things were supposed to work, was working for him. If he had known that casting ninjutsu henge, an improbability in and of itself, upon something that didn't have a chakra system of its own and wasn't part or extension of him, well, he would still have found a way to do it, eventually. But now he just cast the domestic variation of Oiroke no Jutsu on their packs and weapons, poked Fusan, and then spent the rest of the evening teaching them how to apply and cancel it, as well as the ins and outs of ordinary Oiroke no Jutsu, of course. And A and BU did learn quickly by example even when they had no idea why something was working. Of course, being a civilian brought its own problems, as they found out the next day. There was an infamous nest of bandits, known as Brotherhood of Lawless Assassins, less than a day's journey by shinobi means from Takigakure. One might wonder how they could have survived there for so long and reached the obvious conclusion that they were allowed for some reason. Few non-shinobi did, because by normal means it would have been 3 days' journey, at tops, with 2 fast horses, and most people didn't know that much about shinobi capabilities. Also, most clients didn't wonder, period. Bandits were like cockroaches, everywhere and difficult to exterminate. They were part of the scenery. They are Takigakure's scapegoat for illegalities they commit in the vicinity. Not a very believable one, but it doesn't matter in the game. You have to be able to prove your accusations, Fusan instructed Naruto as they walked slowly towards a small ravine where 5 men were crouching, trying to stay hidden and failing miserably. Sunlight reflected from one man's gold tooth, and no one had even tried to mask their chakra. Or bothered to go under the wind, or bathe first. What about clients? Wouldn't Taki get angry if these clowns attacked people on their way there? Naruto asked. I believe they have a quota, and instructions to not attack anyone important looking. Sooner or later they will get too cocky and then they will be replaced. Somehow Fusan made his sandal drop and they all stopped to wait while he strapped it back on. Take the women, pretty brunette, gonna see how good roll, good rack. Small bits of whispered conversation drifted towards them, accompanied by lots and lots of inventive swearing. Trouble ahead, Tomiko-chan sighed. Naruto evaluated the situation like Hibari-sensei had taught him to. 7 bandits, easy to beat, but they shouldn't be able to, and nowhere to hide the bodies. And bandit bodies lying around, living or not, would give them away big time. Hey, I have an idea. Naruto brightened. How about we let ourselves be captured and then Tomiko-chan brings Fuchan to the rescue? That idea is not completely without merit, but there is little chance they would send someone of her caliber to deal with small fry like these, Fusan said, but he sounded contemplative. Still, it might be for the best to allow ourselves be caught and then escape. We may claim they drunk themselves to dumb stupor. No one thinks highly enough of bandits to suspect that story. And we'll be able to teach those bastards some good manners, Naruto smiled grimly. They walked on in the bright light of morning. For a moment it seemed like the bandits wouldn't attack after all, but when Naruto was walking past the one with the gold tooth, the man, big, burly and ugly, leaped and grabbed his arm. The man was practically a small mountain with ham-sized biceps and very little neck. Naruto let out a feminine-sounding shriek. Of course, his experience with feminine shrieks were mostly of Sakura-chan shrieking indignantly, soon followed by a punch, so he actually made the man step back half a step, though he didn't let go of his arm. Oh no, bandits! Whatever shall we do? He tried to fix the situation, raising his left hand to his forehead dramatically, trying to look faint. Sai made a small noise that almost sounded like a snort. This was obviously not how this had been supposed to go, but the bandits weren't about to let that stop them. Quickly they surrounded the little group completely, making threatening moves with their big knives and staffs, laughing anticipatorily. But Naruto was the only one making even half-assed attempt at looking scared, and few of the unkempt faces began to take strange, vaguely uneasy looks. Give us all your money and stuff and we maybe let you go, the man who was holding Naruto's arm prisoner ordered Tomiko-chan. And women stay too. He pressed Naruto against his chest. And he made a move to grope Naruto. When Naruto had trained with Hibari-sensei, he had been surprised just how much someone held in classic hostage position back to attacker's chest, arm around neck could do. He'd been even more surprised to find out that even face-to-face a knee to the groin was an error, since it left the person doing it off balance and was easily blocked by a shift of one leg or simple twist of the hips. The alternative move Hibari-sensei had taught him had the advantage of working in this back-to-chest position as well. He reached back between them, grabbed, pulled and twisted. Hard. The man screamed like a stuck pig and doubled over, letting go of Naruto. He turned and hit once. The man dropped like a rock. Help! I'm being molested. He screamed. Big brother Toshiro, save me from this brute. His face, her face in this case, was pale and frightened. Said Brood was out cold at his feet and couldn't have threatened a newborn kitten. We are gonna fuck and make you regret that, one of the thugs shouted and made a move towards Naruto, as the rest growled and closed ranks around them, but Tomiko-chan grabbed the man's arm and pinned it behind his back in one effortless move, forcing him on his knees. You are going to take us all hostage and bring us to your base, or else, she said. Sai cracked his knuckles and gave one of his creepier smiles. Or else we let Natsu-chan practice gelding with you lot, he promised with a sunny voice. Hiro was the leader of the Brotherhood of Lawless Assassins. He could read and fancied himself an educated man. That could be blamed for the name of the Brotherhood also. His sons weren't mere nameless thugs, no, they had class. At least Hiro thought so, and no one had argued the point out loud. Hadn't he even managed to strike a deal with a real ninja village? That any single competent shinobi could have massacred them all any time they chose to do so was something he chose to not think about much. He was the father of the Brotherhood, and a real father to many of them. Nobody could remember if Big Brother was the oldest of Father's children or not, except maybe Father, but it didn't really matter. He hadn't gotten the moniker Big because of his age, but due to his sheer size, and nobody was eager to take it away from him. He wasn't all that agile and he had never learned much technique, but that was because he had never needed to. He wasn't as stupid as he looked, and he was a fighter to be reckoned with because of his monstrous strength. Anything punched by Big Brother, from wild boars to smaller buildings, stayed down for the count. He was never in a very pleasant mood, and everybody left him well enough alone, most time even Father. And so no one was surprised when Big Brother's group returned successful, even bringing 3 really pretty women and 1 other hostage with them. His looming shape darkened the room as it blocked out the afternoon sunlight from the doorway. For a moment the door had met its maker a long time ago. The prisoners walked in after him and his men after them. There was a pretty, buxom brunette with a sinful little mouth and delectable hips, one woman with inky black hair, and an older, but still beautiful redhead with a medicine seller's backpack. They didn't even look all that roughed up, so they must have done the smart thing and surrendered without a fight. But there was something odd going on. Why had they taken the man also? The Brotherhood wasn't big on accepting non-conventional sexual preferences. Good work, Big Brother, Father said. But why didn't the prisoners look scared? The brunette kind of did, except she seemed to have way too much fun being scared. So, this is your secret hideaway? Well, you could do worse than an inn, the redhead said with the air of one not terribly impressed. So it was a little dirty, so what? They were bandits, not maids. These women could double as maids if it bothered them so. They could even steal black miniskirts and white aprons for them. And first we are going to rid you of that unfortunate attitude. Maybe watching your man being tortured would do it for you? He asked, expecting them to start begging. The brunette kicked Big Brother and he fell down on his knees, whimpering. Mommy too strong, big knife, he mumbled with broken voice. His men, still armed and presumably dangerous, cowered in corners. There were only 4 corners in the bar dining room, so a small fight ensued about who had the right for the last one Ikagoro or Baby Brother. There was general alarm while the knot prisoners spread over the floor. The ring of trembling blades and clubs and staffs was met with disdain, redhead, nothing at all, black-haired, perkiness, brunette, and amusement, the man. Surrender now and we may consider being merciful, Father offered with false bravado. The redhead raised a single, elegant eyebrow. Alas, we are alone in the den of bandits. Who can help us now? The brunette recited excitedly. No need for pretense, Natsu-chan. We don't have to fear hostile eyes anymore, the black-haired said, and her hand disappeared into her long sleeves. Everyone stiffened, but she only took a paper and a brush dipped in ink. Some detached part of Father's mind wondered how she had dipped it in ink in her sleeve. We are your prisoners for a little while. We will escape after you have drunk yourselves unconscious. Since murdering unconscious men in cold blood would make us look quite bad, we will let you live as long as you promise to confirm this story, she said, and let her brush fly on the paper. After that it hurt a lot and they ended up very unconscious indeed. The sun had gone down and the wind was chilly. Fusan ordered watch and Naruto took the first turn just so he would get uninterrupted sleep once he got to sleep. He created his trusty Kage Bunshin and spread them all around their small camp, sitting himself on the bank of the rice field. His muscles were aching little, but it was the good kind of ache after a day well spent. He looked far into the distance where he could only barely see the small, darker patch that was the forest near the hidden village, lost in his thoughts. He thought of Gaara and how things were for Fuchan. He thought how it was really confusing to have two Fus around. He thought how he really missed his team even though Sai and Hibari-sensei and Tomiko-chan and Manfu were totally awesome too and he had learned more with them than during his entire academy time and ninja career put together. If Rasengan didn't count, that was, and he guessed he should credit Aro-sensei for him being able to summon Gamabunta, even if the man had only kicked him off a cliff. Ah, this day was fun, too, he said and leaned back. And as he tore off small patches of green grass and threw it into the water he wondered about this mission. It hadn't seemed too strange at first, of course he would help his fellow Jinchuriki in need, but all this sneaking around was pretty funny business. Why couldn't they just up and go there openly and tell them that creepy S-class terrorists were after one of their kunoichi? Something was off here. But his musings were interrupted when Tomiko-chan walked up to him and plopped down beside him even though she should have been sleeping. What do you think it means to be a shinobi, Natsu-chan? She asked him without any niceties or explanations. Naruto liked it better when she called him Kohai because that meant she thought of him as a real ANBU. Technically he was still a trainee, but he had a mask and a name, as stupid as they were, and Tomiko-chan called him a junior officer. Shinobi protect their people and village and country. They complete their missions and make their village proud. And make a living on the side, Naruto made himself add. Even totally awesome people needed to eat and pay their rent after all. And eat yummy, yummy ramen. The way you say it, comrades first, mission second and self last? Tomiko-chan asked, hugging her knees casually. Naruto hadn't ever thought of it with those terms, but it was a good way to put it so he nodded. Did you know that what I said is a mangled version of an ANBU tenet? Mission first, comrades second and self last is the way of the ANBU. Naruto saw red. Not Kyuubi kind of red that sent his blood pounding in his ears and his fingers itching like there should have been claws instead of soft human fingernails, but the kind of red that happened when people insisted on being so stupid. They had gone after Hibari-sensei with blowpipes when all she had needed was someone who said it was going to be okay. Sasuke had tried to defect to Oto because he couldn't become strong in Konoha, never mind that it was where Itachi had become so strong. In Suna they had thought it was a good idea to be mean to someone as strong as Gaara. Niji had taken his pain out on Hinata-chan when she was the only one in their clan who was both really sorry, really innocent and always nice, and Haku-kun had to die before the jerk Sabuza got around to confessing he liked him. People just made their own and everybody's lives as difficult as possible and then sat around moaning how it was so inevitable. It doesn't take miracles to not traumatize yourself. I have Naruto thought of what Iraka-sensei had once said to him, of him, right after the exams but before they had gone off to protect Koyuki Haim-chan. There are always happy people regardless of how sucky their lives have been and there are people who are miserable and make all kinds of problems for themselves regardless of how wealthy and sheltered they are. I have the greatest wealth of all because I choose to be happy. And he was proud of it. We who choose ninja life become tools to be used for greater purposes. Whether we are happy or not doesn't matter, Tomiko-chan said. Her voice didn't have any inflection. Naruto felt like banging his head against something hard, maybe her thick skull. And how it helps Konoha if you were miserable and then die of ulcer at young age. Besides, if you were caught by some foreign village and they told you to do mission for them now cause they caught you, would you? Naruto couldn't imagine any of these people who were so proud of being tools doing docilely that. Of course not. I am loyal to Konoha to death and beyond. She was whispering but it in no way diminished the intensity of her voice. There you go. You aren't a tool, cause tools work for whoever picks them up. It takes a person to be loyal. Tomiko-chan bent her head to hide her face for a second and pinched the bridge of her nose like she had a headache. Analogies aside, don't you think you are watching this world through rose-colored lenses? Do you really believe there could be a happy ending for people like us? In all her white-gray glory she reminded Naruto of someone. Someone whose heart had also been frozen and brittle. Of course there won't be any happy endings if people don't make them and I'm not going to be unhappy. Hence the choosing. And if I said that this hypothetical thing is my past and I've moved on? Tomiko-chan asked. She seemed curious like a cat. Actually she was staring at Naruto like he was some freak of nature, like a two-headed calf. I would say you haven't moved on, you simply ran away. Hypothetically, Naruto said, which caused Tomiko-chan to look away for a second. But when she looked back at him, her body was relaxed and like a porcelain doll's her face gave away nothing. You interest me. You defy the reality around you, and so far it has bent to your will. I am unaware whether this is luck or a capability of yours, however. Tomiko-chan rose and so did Naruto. The way she spoke had changed, he noted. It was like she was letting him see past some barrier that had been there before. She was more formal now, but she also looked to be more at ease and emotive. He lit up like the sun. Tomiko-chan actually took a step to the side, taken back by his reaction, but Naruto didn't care. He was the kind that learned with his body and reacted with his body, mind trailing after, and he leaped, wrapping his arms around Tomiko-chan's neck. She was a whole head taller than he was, and her back didn't bend under the unexpected weight, so Naruto's feet were left dangling in the air as he attempted to squeeze it all from Tomiko-chan's lungs. Friendship just didn't feel the same if you didn't make them feel it. Sai had already learned it too. He had given up fighting when Naruto gave him a noogie. What is this about? Tomiko-chan hissed, pushing him back down. Koyuki, she reminded Naruto of Koyuki Haim-chan before thawing. She looked like some kind of winter goddess, her face porcelain pale, her ash-pale hair fluttering in the wind, almost colorless in the dark, wearing the white cloak of the squad leader she had taken from Busan as soon as they had left Konoha behind to make the potential enemies concentrate on the wrong person in the disguised as kimono. She was also a very proud goddess, the tilt of her head high and offended. Thanks for trusting me, Naruto said. Tomiko's whole body jerked like somebody had run a lightning jutsu through it. Ouch, he thought, remembering the chirping birds and the sound of water. You are better than I thought, she muttered. Let us make a wager, Natsu Kohai. You have this one mission to convince me that you have the power to change the world for me, so make it count. What do I get if I win? He asked. You have one living relative in this world. If you can convince me, I will tell you who they are. And so she dangled the one thing Naruto would do almost anything for in front of his face. It was cruel of her, but she had forgotten how to not be cruel when she wanted something. She just didn't know whether she wanted to be proven right or wrong. What she, who was called Tomiko, didn't know was that one day they would list Naruto's luck under special abilities in Iwa and Mizu bingo books, and there would be warnings to flee rather than bet with him. Not quite as cool as flee on sight, but Naruto would feel vindicated anyway. Tsunade had learned it already. Never wager with Uzumaki Naruto. Day 16.2, Suborn Count 2. Recorded by the surveillance seal, Root Squad sneaking into Allied Village, Takigakure, security zone under pretense of civilians. Chapter 11, Days 15 to 16, Damsel in Distress, Part 2. One might think that the Hokage Tower would be the most secure building in the village, but in truth not so much. It was the oldest building in the village, the fourth thing Hiroshima Senju had built when Konoha had been but a military camp after the first rampart, the barracks, and the hospital. It had been expanded and heightened and fortified more than once, but the bones of the building had not changed. The sewers, for example, were from time when some things couldn't have been as small as the builder might have wished. They had been built too small for an adult to crawl through, but in ninja world that amounted to very little. This flaw had been long overlooked for three reasons. 1. The tower's sewer system was separate from the rest of the villages and it was in the middle of the village, so getting there wasn't a simple feat. 3. There was always something busier and bigger and more important to take care of. What was number 2? Because of the renovation done at the beginning of Sandame's first term, those older sewers didn't lead higher than the cellar level anymore. Of course, the tower's cells were underground. Rooster, Shinonome Junichi, had seen some utterly bizarre, off-the-wall applications of ninja skills and basic tactics in the course of his long career. A fair number of those he could attribute to two ninja in particular. Uzumaki-san was the second of them, and he had now gotten Danzo into hot water, and rightly so. Rooster's fingers returned to caress the handle of his kunai again and again when he stopped paying attention to them, the memory of red and then black in his taicho falling to the ground bleeding and burning, and now that man was basically helpless in a cell behind one door. One door he was guarding. Shinonome Junichi was enraged and distracted, and while he might have seen a lot during his long career, he hadn't seen this. Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura, teammates of one Uzumaki Naruto, aided by Hyuga Hinata and her teammate Inuzuka Kiba, who had come along to make sure they didn't press gang Hinata-chan into doing anything stupid, were looking around the small restroom kitchen they'd crawled into through the super-secret sewers found by Hinata-chan's incredible vision. How that had happened, Kiba still wasn't too sure if he had been supposed to stop this after all. Sasuke Boza was all for simply waltzing in, but their looks weren't exactly conducive to that sort of thing. Henge wouldn't work either. The ANBU guard would kai the hell out of any chakra signatures that seemed even the least bit suspicious. And they were ANBU. The same way civilians spoke of the ninja with fearful reverence, most ninjas spoke of their ANBU. That reputation was carefully cultivated. A fight entered in low spirits was a fight half lost. How could they get into Councilman Danzo's cell? Kiba's eyes wandered. And why were they so insistent in getting there in the first place? And if only they had some kind of cover. He looked over at a simple cardboard box that had once held paper plates, the only kind the dangerous prisoners were allowed to use, while Sakura-chan poised some ideas and Sasuke prick shot them down like the ice-cold jerk that he was. Ahem. He walked over and picked it up. Hey! Guys? I have a plan. He turned around and pulled the box down over himself. Then he explained his plan. Akamaru whimpered at his feet, but Kiba ignored him. No wimpy defeatist comments allowed, he said. Kiba-san, are you crazy? How would that possibly work? He is an ANBU, Sakura-chan gaped, whispered, and then shook her head incredulously. Dobe, you've had some stupid ideas, but this? The dobe just slipped, since Kiba was acting in a remarkable Naruto-like was at the moment. Sasuke shook his head. Kiba snorted. You got anything better? He challenged the Uchiha. The two other genin looked at each other, then at Hinata-chan, who blushed and shrugged her shoulders. Kiba smirked. If he had any bad qualities, he thought to himself as he knelt near the door, it was that he was a daredevil. Lucky him, women liked daredevils, right? Maybe he could even impress Hinata-chan. Rooster had seen many so stupid it works tactics employed, such as the whole existence of the cooking mean of Kaminari no Kuni, whose whole purpose was to spoil their enemies' missions by making such good food that the ninja couldn't stop eating and would become too fat to fight efficiently. But even that bout of genius by idiocy didn't have anything on Kiba's plan, and that was its strength. You really want to bet all our chances on a box? Sakura-chan asked, and Kiba shrugged. A box and a damsel in distress. Who was gonna expect it? ANBU were the best of the best. ANBU were professionals, and although making assumptions was unwise, they had expectations of the kind of people who would fight them. This was the stuff accidental intrigue is made of, and in its well-meaning simplicity, it completely fell under Rooster's very paranoid radar. This is how it went. Hinata abandoned her very recognizable bulky jacket after sacrificing its hood and a good deal of its backside to make a riding hood, which she then turned inside out to show the red lining. At times, lot of times, it was really handy to carry around so many sharp objects. She knelt in a corner, shielding her head and neck in an inefficient way that totally coincidentally helped to hide her face in the shadows of the hood. Sakura hid herself back in the sewer, hand holding the end of a thin ninja wire. Sasuke put on a cloth mask made of Hinata's jacket's remains and poised himself in a threatening manner. Kiba and Akamaru were hiding under the box. Sakura was to hid her chakra the best she could until she would make herself known. Kiba was to not make himself known at all. In truth, they were counting on Sasuke and Hinata being blinding and deafening and distracting. Help! Hinata shouted. And the play was enacted. Rooster was surprised to hear a shout, muffled as it was through two doors, from where should have been no people, but he reacted in an instant just as he had been conditioned to do and shoeshined into the restroom where a masked, young, slim, black-haired man who had no business being there had attacked a slim woman in Red Riding Hood who also shouldn't have been there. Currently he was raining hits upon her and shouting at her for being useless and weak, which she confirmed by simply cowering from him. It made no sense whatsoever, and if he wasn't always so careful about testing his food and drink, Rooster would have thought someone had drugged him. He attacked them both at full speed, aiming to incapacitate, but as he grabbed the attacker's hand and twisted it behind his back, there was the glint of ninja wire in the dim light of a single candle on a table. He dodged, grabbing the man as a human shield, but all the ninja wire did was release sackcloth full of coffee grounds from the ceiling on them. He paused for a heartbeat, which was enough for the coffee grounds to turn into a jinjutsu of a world of raining coffee grounds and nothing more, not even ground below his feet or the captive in his arms. The overpowering scent of coffee and raining grounds forever and ever. But it was a raw genjutsu. He could still hear the three of them moving and rustling and breathing loudly. He knew where they were. He could feel the radiance of their chakra like warm sunlight on bare skin, boldly not hidden at all. You saved me from the terrible, villainous man who had attacked me without any provocation. My hero! A curiously muffled voice declared, and he took a step back to avoid the body that tried to collide with his, reflexively jumping over a wire meant to trip him as he sent her flying and tore the wire from its handler with a low-level windjutsu. The childishness of it all kept baffling him. He technically should have called reinforcements since the intruders had gotten inside the Hokage Tower, but it wasn't as if they were any kind of threat. Kai! He dispelled the genjutsu intending to capture and interrogate the children, only to detect the movement shadow behind him half a second too late. A hard hit to the back of his head and a deep bite to the unprotected back of his left knee, and he stumbled down, only to be hit one more time as he tried to turn around. His world turned into deep, dimming gray. Kiba put one foot victoriously on the cardboard box and made a pose. I don't hear you mocking my box now, he said and knelt to pat it amicably. Good box, he said and patted Akamaru too when the mean dog nudged his hand while glaring at the box. Sasuke Boza grumbled as he rose from the ground, massaging his tender arm. And why did I have to be the one to play the villain? He asked and gave Kiba his best glare, which sadly held no candle to his big sister's glare when he had skipped his turn to clean the kennel. I didn't like my part either, Hinata-chan chastised him. Kiba smiled sheepishly at her. Sorry, but I didn't trust Sakura-chan to get it right, he explained. He was then struck by a flying kick as Sakura-chan leaped from the sewer with an impressive show of acrobatics that would have allowed her to defeat Ino-chan easily had she used that move in the exams. And Sasuke-san had left them all behind, marching down the corridor towards the cell where a traitor by the name of Danzo was kept. Sasuke reveled in the moment before pushing the key into the lock and turning it. At least he could do something right. Maybe he wasn't in Itachi's class yet, but he was capable of getting to his enemy and getting some answers. Insert key into lock, turn it. The door opened with a slight creak. Sai begun the next morning by saying, Uchiha Sasuke has such a fortunate life. This was met by the appropriate incredulous stare from Naruto. They had camped next to a small river, rice fields surrounding them from every direction. Sai had gotten the last turn of guarding and he had sat stiffly on the slightly rotting log when Naruto had woken up, grinning sleepily. That had wiped the grin from his face though. Do you even know who Sasuke is, Sai? His big brother wiped out his entire clan before he even 10. Then he turned into antisocial, unappreciated bastard and Orochimaru gave him the magical hiki to make him betray us all and still, Uchiha-san has you, Sai said. If his previous statement had appeared to be startling, it had been nothing compared to this one. Naruto wasn't quite often, but now he was opening and closing his mouth again and again like a fish on dry land. You won't give up on him. The false dawn was shimmering in the horizon, but it was still dark and damp and cold after the night. Sai attributed the chill he felt to that. I'm not going to give up on you either. But you better not do anything as stupid, Naruto said, forcing Sai to conclude that maybe the chill had been psychosomatic after all. The warmth seemed to originate somewhere in his stomach and spread out until it reached his fingers. Naruto was clearly more at ease now that the conversation had turned back to the normal tracks where he gave peppy talk to someone else. Naruto, Sai had noticed early during their acquaintance, had no clue how to take compliments. This might not have seemed like a big deal to other people, but Sai had once read that this might lead to a lacking sense of self-worth. As a good friend he had decided to optimize his friend time with Naruto and composed a timetable in his head which was meant to gradually desensitize Naruto to compliments by increasing the amount he received daily. The first timetable was for 4 months, starting with at least 2 compliments per day and ending with 20 minor compliments or 10 positive comments concerning performance on a mission. Oregon 1 I am emotionally attached to you. Right when Sai figured out how to say that without being seriously misunderstood. The last could double as a sign of trust, which Naruto was allotted at least 3 per day, since by admitting attachment Sai would be making himself vulnerable. This would also desensitize Sai to the fear of attachment and abandonment since, according to the investigation he had done on Naruto, the other boy was most unlikely to ever betray him. Sai didn't know much about being a friend, but he had always believed that a campaign well planned was a campaign 1/4 won. The sun was barely up when they continued their trek, blissfully unaware that they had been passed and dismissed at distance by Tsunade's rescue team 3 times already. They were apprehended on their way to Taki-Geikure, of course. Since they were walking in the bright daylight and on the road, the patron, all three Chunin, greeted them politely even as they made a threat assessment. Sai made sure to modify his body language according to what Hibari-sensei had told him of pretending to be a civilian and made a resolution to be very shy and silent. His interpersonal skills still weren't that great. The Taki shinobi all wore Chunin vests and rather similar clothes altogether, and they looked so alike that they might have been brothers. Who knew? Maybe they were. The leader of the patrol asked them their business firmly, but politely. Tomiko-san, the designated man of the group, launched into an explanation. And we took good Furiko-san with us to share the cost of the mission. Her accent was definitely provincial, and she stood like she had been astride too long, smiling with an open mouth. Naruto was fairly hanging from her arm like a little child, but there was nothing childish about his cleavage or the way he piped about wanting to gild his future husband. The Taki shinobi gave her a wary look, the kind that any male would have, and one even discreetly shifted his legs closer. Tomiko-san admonished Naruto, who looked sheepish. Sai was more of an observer of human race in its native habitat than a participant at this point, but he found Naruto to be very educational. Not only because of how he acted, but also because of the reactions he got from the people he interacted with. "You will protect us on our way to the village?" Naruto asked shyly, looking at the tall shinobi through his eyelashes. It was actually disturbing in its come-hither power. One of the shinobi, the one with one earring, nodded, but didn't otherwise comment. "Acting so cool," Naruto said, sauntering up a lot less shyly to poke him in the chest. "You're trying to seduce an engaged woman. Admit it." "I am not." The man exploded. His face was red like sunburn. "Pish. You can say pish to a shinobi in active duty, right?" Naruto said to no one in particular, rolling his eyes. "I have no such designs towards you, Yagami-san," the man said, crossing his arms and looking away. Naruto gave him a stern look for a second before a grin broke out. It resembled his happiest grin quite a bit, but since his mouth was smaller now it came out as a lot cuter. "I know you don't," he responded. "But I decided to tease you, Shinobi-san. You were cute when you were flustered." He tilted his head and the Taki-ni made a small, strangled sound, his eyes not knowing where to stay. Sai shook his head, unsure of what to do or why Naruto was behaving like he was. He had seen friendly bantering and flirting before, but this time, he wasn't sure why Naruto was doing it. Then he noticed that the Taki shinobi were obviously more at ease now, smirking and shaking their heads at the selected victim. Naruto grabbed the man's, whose name turned out to be Inaguchi Keiji, hand and pretty much dragged him towards the village and the horizon, babbling about how he only wanted to gild the husband-to-be because his sister Sakaki deserved better, not because she usually went around attacking men with knives, and how her favorite food was anpan buns and so forth. The two other Chunin continued their patrol, leaving Inaguchi-san to Naruto's tender mercies. They kept a good pace for civilians, the sun was shining warmly and birds were chirping. Inaguchi, who was the Taki team medic, engaged Fusan into a short conversation about painkillers with and without blood-thinning effects, but he and Tomiko-san were allowed to walk in silence. So teasing people was an effective way of putting them at ease? Tease was to annoy or pester, vex or to make fun of, mock playfully or to arouse hope, desire, or curiosity and without affording satisfaction, at least according to Konohagakure highly accurate shinobi dictionary. It also meant to cut tissue, for example, into pieces for examination. That was the shinobi part of it. But cutting things aside, teasing seemed to be a shinobi art. How to go about it, this was the root of the many social faux passes of Sai. Haruno Sakura would not be pleased. Around the midday, after a short break, Naruto stole Inaguchi's attention away again, this time dragging Tomiko-san into the conversation, and Sai made his move. Hidden inside his long sleeves was a small pocket tied to the inside of his left forearm. It only took him a covert heartbeat to feel for the clay jar and the metal jar, both smaller than his little finger. He dipped his little finger first inside the clay jar, covering it with protective tallow, and then into the other one full of skin-colored powder. He took Fusan's hand with air of casualness, hiding his own inside the sleeve of the other's dark blue haori. "Ask away." His fingers tapped the ANBU coat against Fusan's skin. It was testament to his senpai's professionalism that he didn't react outwards in any way, walking through the sunlight and chirping of cicadas like nothing was wrong. Sai knew fully well that little wasn't wrong with Fusan now. Inquiry? You know what I mean. What did he have to give to Crane? Support. Encouragement. Understanding. Acceptance. Unconditionally. Tap tap tap, his fingers tapped, among them his little finger that came in contact with Fusan at the word encouragement. The man's skin felt clammy and his pulse had quickened. What is that worth? You are a weapon of Konoha and you owe it to keep yourself at peak condition. You don't get to refuse training, clean water, bandages or counseling. Dull blades are worth little. My past doesn't interfere with my duty. Dull blades are worth little. Shinobi that deceive themselves are worth nothing. Sai could feel the muscles in Fusan's wrist strain and he smiled at Naruto's back. Fusan wanted to talk to Naruto, he had simply worded it such way that it wasn't interfering with his sense of duty. And if it wasn't enough, he let go of Fusan's hand and after a little wait dipped his finger into the third jar made of polished wood. The poison on Fusan's skin was quick to absorb, but slow to affect unless the one poison used at least sea-level amount of chakra. The more chakra used, the quicker the incapacitation and even eventual death. If Fusan didn't fight once Naruto decided how to go about refusing Danzo's orders, Sai would offer the antidote. If he fought, he would go down quickly. Naruto had gotten him into touch with his self-worth, emotions, and respect for the official command structure of the village, kind of. Morals were slower to come by. That was when Naruto doubled over, pressed his hands over his ears and shrieked like someone was cutting them to pieces, but there was no cause Sai could perceive. When Nakamura-fu had been only a 12-year-old genin, her teacher had given her a biwa string and an order to make a hole go through its whole length with only her chakra without breaking the string. It had taken her 2 years and 522 strings between missions, but when she was done, not only had she finally completed the most infuriating training exercise ever, but her chakra control was perfection incarnate. This mission is going to be a piece of cake, Yukimura-sensei told her. The nephew of our daimyo is a passionate chess player and he will take part of a chess tournament that will be held in the capital of Tsuchi no Kuni. He wants you to assassinate one of his opponents, a jeweler called Masahiko Kyo. Here are details of the tournament. And he handed her a brochure. It was a beautiful day and sunlight shone through the big windows of Yukimura's house. Usually shinobi preferred small windows, but Yukimura appreciated aesthetics and the airy, sunlit room was truly beautiful, every piece of furniture arranged just so. And of course, anyone trying to sneak and trough one of these windows was in for a world of pain. And in the middle of this elegance, Fu was sitting on a giant pillow that was shaped like ladybug, a pink ladybug that was forever winking an eye, and read through the brochure. It held all the necessary information about the tournament, its location, schedule of the players and the hotels the players would be booked into. Then she handed it back to Yukimura-sensei and tilted her head. He is willing to pay my wages to be rid of a competitor in a chess tournament? She was used to people wanting other people dead over silly, petty reasons, but this one took the cake. As I said, the honorable nephew is passionate about chess. Also, Masahiko-san is entomophobic and the client wishes to have him killed by poisonous insects. I have understood there is a bit of a grudge involved over a lost match. Yukimura-sensei made that little hand wave he always made when he wanted to convey bafflement of humanity as a whole. I don't have any special control over insects, regardless of my biju. Any ninja would do. People always expected that hosting the Nanabi came with special connection to insects, like what the Aburame of Konoha had, or maybe some kind of summoning contract. Actually, it was possible that Nanabi could have given her that, but it wouldn't have spit on Fu if she was on fire. She was its jailer after all, and if she died before the village had a chance to extract it from her and transfer into a new host, it would be free. It gave her the bare minimum the seal forced it to. I know it. He doesn't, Yukimura-sensei said with that painfully wistful look in his eyes. And Fu couldn't take it anymore. Fu stood up and walked to the door with her hips swinging more than they had when she had walked in, turning to look over her shoulder. She winked at her sensei, allowing her lips go through the motions of a mischievous smile. I believe I will go bug a merchant. It was a terrible pun, but Yukimura-sensei's face was lit like a lantern and Fu exited his house with a bounce to her steps, moving her arms and upper torso more than she would have otherwise. She wasn't into the role enough that it would feel real yet, and these gaps in the middle always left her feeling like something was clawing inside her chest. Fu only noticed that her hands were pressed into tight fists when it began to hurt, and she unfurled them, wondering why she wanted to hit something so much. She sneaked into the house she shared with Nishimura Obaasama, packed the essentials in silence, and left a letter on her caretaker's bedside table. Nishimura Obaasama wouldn't be happy when she saw how her Fu-chan was behaving again, and she wanted to postpone the realization. Fu had barely left the village, running for a few minutes before she realized she was being followed. Whoever was after her was good, but she had the keen sense of smell her Biju reluctantly granted her, and she was a woman who had the control to make a hole go through a biwa string's whole length with only her chakra without breaking it. She could smell meat eaters, and 2 of them. There was also the clinical hint of soap. And for all her targets tried to hide their chakra, she could feel it prickling against her skin in the telltale way of Kekkei Genkai. She changed her course minimally, walking towards a clearing nearby. She would meet her enemies there. It is a little-known fact about the Jinchuriki that the strength of their Biju doesn't matter as much as the strength of their seal. It hardly matters whether you have the Kyubi or the Hachibi when there is no way you can channel all their tails and still remain in control. In this, Gaara was really quite unlucky. Not only did he have the weakest Biju, but also the weakest seal, weakened more by the years he had let Shikaka run amok. Naruto was the exact opposite, in possession of the strongest Biju and the strongest seal. Usually a Jinchuriki could only handle maybe 2 tails worth of chakra without losing it. Naruto, while he hadn't learned it yet, could handle 3. But Gaara was a devastating opponent despite being so handicapped, because the way you use what you have matters just as much as how much you have. He couldn't channel 1 full tail, but when the kitty gloves came off he had an instant S-class upgrade. In the same vein, Fu could only channel 2 tails, but what she did with that power was frankly amazing. Fu entered the sunlit clearing. It was a sign of the skill of her pursuers that the birds still stood undisturbed. She had slowed into walk. It was now or after the sun had set. And 2 men in red-black cloaks appeared out of nowhere, one massive and blue and ugly, the other dark and handsome in a way that made Fu curse her bad luck. She closed her eyes the moment she realized she was up against the second-last Uchiha and coated her entire body with a protective layer of chakra. It wasn't a popular technique since it couldn't block even a barrage of kunai and drew on half of the reserves of a regular jonin. But then Fu had 200 times the chakra regular jonin had. She performed Suiro no Jutsu around them all, encasing them within a sphere of water. With the preparations out of the way, she was getting started. Either you are really stupid, imprisoning yourself, or you are playing sneaky with your betters, Kisame taunted her. And just like Yukamura-sensei would have, wanted, Fu's mouth curved into a mischievous smile. Seniority can translate into senility when the years add up. She challenged the man and she screamed. There seemed to be no voice, no noise, but she heard an exclamation of pain as her scream hit flesh and cooked it, bouncing back from her own protected skin without doing harm, and the water prison surrounding them begun to evaporate into thick, white mist. Fire jutsu hurled towards her. She blocked it with her scream, made the flames bounce back as a wall of death, and twisted out of the way of a sword in a barrage of kunai and a water jutsu that she turned into more mist, and lightning jutsu was cast that she had to dodge, and she screamed. She screamed and the fire of her voice burned flesh. She twisted her body in the hot, wet air, calling for more water to keep the water sphere solid. They were dancing in boiling mist, waltzing in her deadly trap. "Take this, Beetle Biddy!" Kisame shouted at her and cast some ice variation of the standard Mizu wear, making her mist to fall to the ground in ice droplets and cooling the temperature. Only, in the heat her voice had generated, the jutsu wasn't fast enough. She made her next scream even more focused, like a knife, and followed through with her wakizashi, her eyes still closed. She drew blood, Kisame drew more. Everything seemed to snap into terrible clarity, and she could hear her heartbeats hammering against her eardrums. Itachi was staying out of it, and it unnerved Fu, but at least she had more room to dodge and parry. She couldn't allow pain to distract her, for all it was sending needles up her leg and back and straight into her brain. Yukamura-sensei would be so disappointed if she did. She called more water and vaporized it with her battle scream, favoring her left leg as her right was bleeding quite badly. She performed a quick medical jutsu to stop the bleeding before it started to affect her endurance. This was difficult to do without stopping her attack, but not impossible. The tissue damage would have to wait. "What is this?" Kisame shouted in a pained voice. Fu opened her eyes. The mist was so thick there was no way she could see the Uchiha's eyes if he didn't thrust his face into hers, and if he could do that, the Sharingan was inconsequential in the situation. The mist was under the control of her voice. She could feel them moving and sent a lightning jutsu. Just be class in the midst of all the conducting water, trusting her chakra armor to protect her from a blast like that. Highly focused ultrasound waves. The fire of the air. Her opponents were better at Jinjutsu and Kenjutsu, and she would have wagered they beat her at ninjutsu as well, but they had made a mistake by allowing her to make the first move. She screamed and the air was smelling like water and cooking human. Then a force of air hit against her, throwing her physically against the water of their prison and knocking the wind out of her. The mist couldn't evaporate in their prison, but she closed her eyes because she knew there was a clear path between her and her opponents. Kisame attacked her with silent, deadly intent, and she dodged, opening her mouth, reinforcing her technique with Nanabi's chakra. Before she could get a whisper out, a focused force of air hit her inside her open mouth, forcing the building sound back. Blood-red pain flashed through Fu's head and down her throat, scalding like boiling water. And she was falling through gray fog and into darkness, the pain dimming little by little. "You had to wait that long, bastard?" She heard an angry voice demanding. She screamed one more time with raw throat, directing it blindly to the direction of the voice, and she was rewarded with a muffled sound of pain and something popping like the skin of an overcooked sausage. I wanted to copy her technique and her countermeasure. Besides, at your level you should have been able to get a drop at her. After that, Fu knew only blessed black. Day 16.2, Suborn Count 2. Recorded by the surveillance seal, Root Squad sneaking into Allied Village, Takigakure, security zone under pretense of civilians.
Go support me on Patreon for more fan fiction that includes adult content as well. The link is in the description and like everywhere on my channel. Thank you for your views, likes, subscriptions, and overall support of my ongoing efforts to bring great content to all of you.